Hi, guys, and welcome to the Horror Room. So, today's topic is something that I'm pretty sure I've done before. And actually, some of these movies I'm pretty sure were on that list. But it's something that still, I feel like a lot of people make lists like this. I'm only going to do five, but we're going to be talking about movies that never got a sequel, or at least at the time of this recording haven't. Um, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It might not happen for a while. It might not happen ever. Now, some of these have had like pseudo sequels, and we'll talk about those. Um, but they're just movies that never got another chance to fully expand on the characters or the story. And you have movies like Halloween and Friday the 13th that have gone on for decades at this point. And they have been given way more shares than some of the more creative. Like, why didn't this get more attention? Like, why? And some of these are like very popular as of today. And like I said, you saw it in the thumbnail, and it's going to be our first example: Killer Clowns from Outer Space. This is one that's a no-brainer. Like, you could bring these guys back. You could do it in a setting nowadays, and I think the Chiodo, I think that's how you say their last name, the Chiodo brothers. I think that they've tried over the past couple years or decades or whatever to get something going, but it just never took off. Um, and nowadays you're seeing Killer Clowns merch like everywhere. It's more popular than it's ever been. There's a video game, everything. So it makes no sense to me. I think that even one point they were talking about doing a sci-fi original sequel. So glad that didn't happen because I mean most sci-fi original sequels suck. And Killer Clowns does not deserve that treatment. Like hell, even if they did a remake, that would be something. But this has gotten nothing other than merchandise and a game. But Killer Clowns is one of those ones that I would love to see further explored. Maybe like go to the clowns' planet. That would be fun. Have the clowns invade like I don't know a circus or something. I don't know. It seems a little more obvious, but I think there's a lot of fun ideas. We could see new types of clowns. Yeah, so there's a lot of potential with the Killer Clowns universe. And here's another one that had potential and even had talks of a sequel for a while, and that's the Monster Squad. Now, this one's not a full horror movie. It has some horror elements. It's definitely not a straight family movie either. There's a lot of, aside from the frightening moments, there's a lot of language and stuff in this. But that was the 80s, so some of this stuff is definitely outdated in terms of tastefulness. Uh, but yeah, you could update that, or even if you didn't want to, if they had done a sequel back then, I'm sure it would have been less focused on those aspects. What they originally did in this is basically like kids versus the Universal monsters, and they had talked that if they were going to do a sequel, it was going to be like more of the atomic age, like robots and aliens and stuff like that. So I think that would have been really, really cool to see the Monster Squad continue saving the day against these different things. And who knows? They could have done that. Then maybe they would have done slashers, like do a movie when they're older and they're fighting slashers. There's just so many cool ideas that you could run with. Um, but obviously, it's been a very long time. This is a 20th anniversary version, which is pretty old by nowadays standards. When did this come out? Yeah, I'm not seeing the date for when this was released, but yeah, this is a Lionsgate release. Yeah, this is a movie that I think a lot of people would love to see a sequel for. I mean, I'm not sure who all's still alive that was involved with this filming of the original, but like, yeah, even bring them back as older kids and have them fight like a different group or a different style. That'd be pretty cool. Next is a movie that um, technically kind of got a sequel, but we'll talk about that. And that's Boogeyman, the Killer Compilation. The company that made this, Flix Mix, I'm sure it was hell getting the licensing to get all this put together in one little trivia compilation. My only complaint with this, and I do love this, I have it on VHS and DVD, um, is some of the scenes they chose to represent, like Chucky. It's from Child's Play 2. It's a decent scene when he kills the teacher. But there's a lot of really other cool scenes. If they were going to choose anything from that one, I think the How's It Hanging Phil would have been really funny to see. Uh, Ghostface, they got Leatherface. The Leatherface one is perfect. That's the perfect scene you choose. Leprechaun, they kind of chose a weird one. But yeah, there's a lot of cool characters on there, but there's some that they left out, and I've always been like, well, they should have done a sequel. Now they did make another Flicks Mix volume, but it was Ultimate Fights, and even that one isn't perfect. Like the fights they chose, like there's some good ones on there, but there's a lot that's like, why is this on here? Is it just for filler? Um, so it kind of seems like some of these choices were maybe made because they couldn't use certain films or certain moments from certain films, and that's understandable. But at the same time, like, I don't know, some of these scenes are very like the Halloween scene is basically just the ending of the movie. Um, they could have showed like the Ghost Bob part. That's an iconic scene that gives you the feel of Michael Myers without spoiling the end of the movie. Another ones make no sense. The Jason Voorhees one, they chose Jason Goes to Hell. So maybe they only had the rights to the New Line Cinema Jason movies, and they didn't want to use Jason X or Freddy versus Jason. So maybe there's problems with that. But I don't know. But I've always thought, there's a lot more new characters. There's some that they left out of here, Pumpkinhead. They never used Pumpkinhead. Um, Trying to think of another classic one as an example. Well, anyways, but then you have like newer age slashers and villains. You got Art the Clown. You got Victor Crowley. You could use the baby face killer from Happy Death Day, maybe. You could do updated scenes from newer movies. You could bring back Michael and Ghostface. They have newer films. Um, but I think it'd be more interesting to do like, current or more recent villains like Jigsaw. There's a ton of material you can choose from him. And, it's not him technically, but show a Saw Trap in there. Yeah. Uh, Captain Spaulding, that'd be a great one to put on compilation. But yeah, the Boogeyman, I've always thought, it'd be great to see another one or somebody redo that idea. Like I said, I know licensing is probably the huge benefactor to that. Um, but I've always wanted that, and maybe it's just me. But I'm real nostalgic for that. I remember seeing commercials for that during SmackDown, watching that on TV. Um, Next, we have the Adam Green movie, Digging Up the Marrow. Now, he's done 4 Hatchet movies, or, Victor Crowley, whatever. Um, and this is one that I always thought was a great idea that could have been expanded on further. Maybe it would spoil, some of the charm that I think this movie has. But, it's definitely ripe for exploration. Monsters living underground. You can create different ones. You can have, somebody find the marrow, which they kind of hint at the end of this movie. Um, but I think that the reason that this didn't get any more attention, well, I heard it got pushed to release a lot sooner. They were doing tours with it, and they kind of stopped the tour, even though Adam Green said they could have kept going on tour. But also there was a problem with piracy, people just downloading it rather than watching it, and I admit in the past, I was a little piratey myself, but I did obviously end up buying this movie, and I actually kind of want to upgrade this and find it on Blu-ray, or if they do a 4K release, with like some a scrapbook like that, the Alex Party, the original Digging Up the Marrow. That'd be really cool to get that like in a collectible set. But I've always loved the designs of the monsters, the idea, and I just really, really wish we could explore that further. I know Adam Green has talked about doing another Hatchet and stuff, so I'm interested to see where they go with that, but only time will tell. And last but not least is a movie called Haunt, which you can't really see because this is a special edition. Uh, yeah, it's dark, but it's your basic kids go to a haunted, not kids, but college kids. There we go. Go to a haunted house. The people in there are actually killing people. Ah! But the way they did this and pulled it off was really interesting. The fact that the masks they're wearing are similar to the disfigurements that they have. That's a really cool concept. And even though, spoilers, if you haven't seen this, even though all the haunters are dead by the end of the movie, you could totally do a different location. This is an idea that would be like, oh yeah, this is not just a one off. There's like a whole bunch of people doing this. You could do different looks, different masks, different setups for traps or whatever. It's just a really fun idea, and they have been talking about doing a Haunt 2 for a long time, and it's getting to the point where I don't think it's gonna happen, and it's a bummer because, like I said, it's such a good idea. There's plenty of room to improve upon it, and fingers crossed. If I had to pick one of these that realistically could happen, it would be Haunt 2, and that would be the one I would actually want, because some of these like Killer Clowns and Monster Squad, in that time, if they had done it, it would probably be great. But so many years after the fact, like decades after the fact, probably wouldn't work as well. And we get too many of these legacy sequels that, some of these it would be perfect within a couple years of the release of the original. Makes more sense that way. But if it happens now, it probably would, and it would be a success, especially like Killer Clowns, like I said. But yeah, so tell me, are there any movies that you guys think never got a chance at a sequel that deserved one? Leave it down below. I'd be curious to see if there's some that you guys think about, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good one, and I just didn't consider it. But these are, of course, my personal favorite ones that I always watch, and I'm by the end like, man, it'd be so cool to see this like continue further. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week.